bookworm. This year in 2021, I set a goal to read 52 books, which means one book every week for 2021. And in January, February, and March, I was able to read 13 books right here. And I wanted to share them with you guys in case you're looking to get back into reading too, like me. The first book that I want to share is The Lost Hero by Riordan, who also wrote the Percy Jackson series. The characters from the old books do come back and have roles in this book, and it's a nice mixture of Greek and Roman mythology, which in some ways are one and the same, but he combines it really well in a very mysterious and fun way. And even though this is like a middle school level book, it's just fun sometimes to read a book that you don't have to think too deeply about and you can just enjoy and go on the adventure with the characters. And so this was my first read of 2021 just to get me back into reading, and it was the perfect choice for me. Unfortunate thing about me owning this book is that I own book number 1 and I own book 3, 4, and 5 in the series, so I'm missing book number 2, but hopefully I can get that soon so that I can continue reading the series. And I'm really excited for the Percy Jackson Disney Plus series. The next book that I wanted to share is a book that I brought in from 2020 and finished in 2021, and it is A Little Life by Hanya yanagihara. And this cover is what I looked like while I was reading this book. I will say there is a hefty trauma warning or trigger warning list for this book, and I would highly recommend that you check it out before you dive into this guy, because even just thinking about it, I am getting a little bit sad. I rated this book on Goodreads a 5 out of 5, not because it is a perfect book, but because it's one of those books that I just know I'm going to be thinking about for a really, really long time. There's no real plot line. It follows 4 friends, and mainly this guy named Jude, through decades and decades of their life and their friendship. And I guess if I had to summarize the book in a sentence, it would be about how people process trauma and experiences that they've had. That sometimes the processing isn't always going to be picture perfect, like we see in a lot of books and a lot of movies. I haven't annotated a book since AP Lit in high school, but this book really, I had to mark the spots that really got me, mark the spots that made me laugh and made me cry. I watched so many videos about this book before reading it, and everyone was crying so much, and I thought, the book is split up into several parts, and I got through like part 2 and 3, and I hadn't really cried yet. I got really a little bit sad, but I didn't cry, and I was like, I think I'll be fine. And then towards the latter parts, I was just sobbing, because I think by the end I had gotten so attached to the characters that I really felt for them. And I really love Jude. I love Jude and Willem so much that I named 2 of my plants Willem and Jude. This is one of those books I would love to reread, but I don't think I could ever do it. And so that's why I marked all these spots that I could just go back and enjoy. If you are in the mental space and emotional space to read this book, I recommend it. I do. This is probably going to be one of my most memorable reads from 2021. So, A Little Life. Literally, you will look like this, I promise you. Do not underestimate this book. So the next book that I want to share is Smashed by Junji. Ooh, scary. This is basically like an anthology. Is that the right word? It's a collection of horror manga that Junji Ito has written. And I've actually read a couple of his books before, Uzumaki, Shiver, which I don't own yet, but every now and then I'll treat myself and purchase one of these because I just really love his art style. See, like that would literally haunt my nightmares, but I can't stop reading it. So this one has 13 short stories, some of them following like villages that have been haunted, a traveling haunted house that has like actual dead bodies in it, just like curses and stuff like that. And so it's a fast read, it's fun. I like the themes that he goes through, kind of about humanity and human nature, like what truly is the horror of these stories. Is it the monsters or is it the people that are causing these horrific things to happen? The next graphic novel that I wanted to share was March, book number 2 by John Lewis, who was our congressman. This series follows basically his story and how he kind of rose as an activist and a leader in the nonviolent movement for civil rights. And I think that part was the most insightful part that I didn't really feel like I learned in schools, the lengths that these activists went to be a non-violent movement. They would practice by sitting in a room with each other in a dark room, and they would throw things at each other and yell, you know, racial slurs at each other to practice to make sure that they could handle and stay non-violent. And I think if you're trying to get educated about the civil rights movement and trying to learn more about these movements, you have a hard time reading nonfiction like I do, or reading longer textbooks. And this is a great start. I think the visual arts can be very powerful in showing you the scenes that were occurring back then that we don't often see in the history textbooks. So March, the series. The last graphic novel that I read during this 3-month period was Bloom by Ken Panetti and Savannah Ganacho. And it really follows this kiddo who works in a bakery with his dad, and he has a tense relationship with his dad. He wants to be a musician, he doesn't want to work in the bakery, and then he meets this other guy who starts working in the bakery, and their friendship develops and the relationship develops and helps him realize his love for his family and where he comes from. I think at the beginning he really wants to be away and go away from his roots, and he kind of resents his family for holding him back. And then as the story progresses, he starts to understand the importance of family and the importance of loving where you came from. I didn't completely feel attached to the story because it's a one-off, like it's not a series, so it felt fast a little bit for my taste. But the thing that I really loved about this book was the colors. The theme of it entirely is in blue, so throughout the book you just see all these different shades of blue. The art is really cute, the scenes with the baking is really cute, and they even have some recipes at the end for you to bake the main thing from the middle of the book, which I won't spoil. A throwback, James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl was one of my favorite authors as a kid. I absolutely loved Matilda and Willy Wonka. And for those who don't know, James and the Giant Peach follows James, the main character, and his giant peach that grows in his backyard one day due to a magical encounter. And in the peach, he meets some new friends and adventure ensues. I do remember enjoying it a lot more as a kid, and I think that's the beauty of this. It's a book for kids. As an adult, it was a little bit harder to read because of the language that he uses. All in all, I really enjoyed revisiting the characters that I distinctly remembered and loved. It's a very fun read if you're looking for something to read with your kids or with your younger cousin. I think this is an easy one and a really, really good one that they'll enjoy. Now we're gonna go into our rom-com era. The first one I want to recommend is The Friend Zone by Abby Jiminez. And this book follows Kristen Peterson. She's the main character, and she's going to be the maid of honor at her friend's wedding. And she meets the best man at this wedding, and they hit it off right away. The only hard part is that she's going to have a surgery that will make it very, very difficult or almost impossible to have kids. And he has expressed that he wants to have a huge, huge family. And so knowing that despite her attraction to him, she puts him in the friend zone and kind of keeps him at an arm's distance. And so the beginning of the book, I will say, was a little bit harder to read because there are some elements of like emotional cheating, which we do not condone in this household. But at that time when I was reading it, I thought, okay, this is gonna be like a 2 or 3 star read. But by the end of it, I actually cried reading this book because I felt so attached to the main character and her struggle and her kind of the emotional burden that she had put herself through. And I think that is one of the things that made this book so enjoyable and memorable for me, is that it delved into a very deep situation that a lot of books don't talk about. Despite the seriousness of the topic too, there are so many parts that just feel very rom-com, very fun. Like I laughed, I giggled, I was like blushing. It was very sweet. A very, very fun and lighthearted read that I got through very, very quickly. And then the second rom-com book that I read was I Believe in a Thing Called Love by Maurene Gu. This one I felt so deeply connected to. So the main character, Desi Lee, is a type A, like straight A student, valedictorian, president of like 16 clubs, great at everything except for flirting. Like there's one part in the story, spoiler alert, her pants literally fall down in front of the guy she likes, and it's just so ridiculous how bad she is at romance. And because of that, she decides to tackle it like how she tackles all her studies. She decides to study Korean dramas and take notes and figure out, okay, step by step, what do I need to do? What has worked in all these Korean dramas that now I will do to entice the guy that I have a crush on? The character herself was very personable and, like I said, resonated deeply with who I am as a person who is, you know, very smart at books, but bad at common sense and flirting. So there were definitely a lot of parts in this book where I absolutely was like kicking my feet in my bed, like giggling and laughing. If you like Korean dramas, what I liked about this book too is that they directly reference a lot of the dramas that we have watched. So like Flower Boy Ramen Shop and like Boys Over Flowers, and very lighthearted, very sweet read. I think I'll read more books from her because they just seem very happy-go-lucky. So the next one I want to share is The Assassin Game by Kirsty McKay. And this book is your typical young adult thriller mystery. It follows some kids who go to a boarding school, and at the boarding school they have basically like a live action mafia game, and then of course things take a turn and someone dies or gets hurt. And I thought the premise, like I said, was really cool, and I think it was just lacking that that made it a book that I really would recommend to all of my friends. I enjoyed it. I read through it fast. It didn't take a lot of deep thinking to get through it, and it did feel a little bit predictable, but nonetheless it was a cool story, and I kind of wish they spent a little bit more time developing the characters because I didn't feel that attached to them. But all in all, an okay read. We Were Liars, which is a really big TikTok book. It's by E.Lockhart, and the back of it says, if anyone asks you how it ends, just lie. And so I don't really want to give away too much. It kind of follows these kids who are these cousins and then this other guy who live on an island during the summer, and there's something mysterious that's going on with all of them, something tragic, and then you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. It's one of those like unreliable narrator type books, and even that kind of like is a little bit of a spoiler. So hopefully if you can figure out the ending before it ends, I commend you, because I did not predict it, and after getting to the end I almost wanted to go back and reread it again to see kind of like what I missed. The last young adult mystery thriller type I read was The Cousins by Karen McManus, and she actually wrote One of Us is Lying, The Two of Us Can Keep a Secret, and One of Us is Next series. This one, which these were really great, and I mean they're your basic young adult mystery thriller. So when I saw this one at Target, I had to get it. And I will say I was a little bit disappointed with this one compared to One of Us is Lying. The premise was cool. It follows these cousins who get called by their estranged grandmother to come live on this mysterious summer island and work at her island, but they haven't talked to her in like many years. So they go there and try to figure out like what has kept her from speaking to her children for so long. And that underlying mystery was fun and easy, but again, I didn't really feel that connected to these characters, and so I kind of just read through it to read it. Was I surprised by the ending? Not really, but I did enjoy it as like a fast mystery to get me through a reading slump. And so I wouldn't recommend this one per se if you were just starting to read her books, but I would definitely recommend her other books. Like One of Us is Lying was really good. This one, not as much. Still enjoyable, but the other ones are a little bit better. My last two reads for this month of March were This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. I read this one, the first one first, and I liked it so much that I had to go to the library and get the second one. And it basically follows this world where the cities are ravaged by monsters, kind of like vampires, monsters that eat your heart out, and then monsters that like suck your soul out. And it follows the two main characters, which are Katie and August. Katie is a human and August is a monster that looks like a human. And it follows kind of what the city is going through in trying to tame these monsters or capture these monsters. And then also August, who is a monster but feels very human and wants to be more like a human. And what I liked about this series was that, you know, it's a series about monsters, but it talks about the darkness that lies within humans and that gray area where, you know, not everyone is exactly good or bad, and monsters are also not exactly good or bad. They're kind of like in between. And so it really talks about that while being very action filled and exciting. So the first book isn't, actually these two books aren't very romantic at all. They're very much like your dystopian young adult thriller type book. There's a little bit hints of of romance here and there, but it's not the main focus, which I really enjoyed. And again, they're very exciting, they're very fast-paced, so that's why after I read the first book, I really had to go and get the second book, and I finished them within several days. So if you're looking for something that's quite similar to like Divergent or Hunger Games or those types of books, but feels a little bit more young adult and less like teenager, then I think I really recommend this series. Also, just look at this cover. He's holding a violin. That's August, and that's where his power comes from, but I won't delve too deep into it. But I thought this cover was so pretty, and that's the reason why I actually bought it at Barnes & Noble. And then I ended up really enjoying it and getting both of these. So highly recommend these two books. So those were the 13 books that I read through January, February, and March. I hope that if you were looking to get back into reading, that you were able to find something or hear some book that sparked your interest, and that you'll start reading again sometime this month. I'm still going to try to keep up with I'm still going to try to keep up and read 52 books by the end of the year, and hopefully more. My original goal was actually 100 books, but that was putting a little bit of stress on my life, so I revised it and made it 52 books, and I think I will definitely reach that goal this year. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Happy reading, and until next time.